G'day gamers, Ranger Tony here. Today I am going to start a playthrough of the original Baldur's Gate. So with the release of the trailers for Baldur's Gate 3, which will be coming out next year, the trailers are already out, but the game should be coming out next year. I've seen a bit of interest on the net for various people playing and reviewing the original Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2. So I thought I would do a playthrough. Now, I do have some playthroughs of this on my channel, some very old stuff that I did a couple of years ago. They were taken from Twitch streams that I had done. So the episodes are very long. They're very boring, like most of my episodes. And they're not very informative and not really very good when I look back on them. So I'm redoing it. This is a new playthrough. I'm going to probably release a few other videos explaining about builds, tutorial videos and things like that. But what I'm going to do different this time that I haven't done before is I'm going to play an entire party. So I'm going to use the create party option to build my entire party. Now, I've already pre-generated the characters that I want to play. But I'm going to go through them right now. So I have experimented over the last few days with a party-based playthrough, and it goes very, very well. Now, the first thing that I'm going to point out is that this game is what has influenced me for years in my play style. So if you've seen a lot of my videos, you see that I tend to play rangers, and I tend to want to play an entire party of archers, of ranged weapon combatants. And it's Baldur's Gate that really inspired that, because when I used to play with whatever character I had, and then I would give all of my NPCs ranged weapons, and it works really, really well. If you don't know that, we'll definitely see this in another episode. You won't be able to see it very much in this first episode because we won't really be able to experience the combat that way. But just the way that the mechanics of the game work with the fog of war and the way that you slowly reveal your opponents, you can actually reveal them one or two at a time, and then with ranged weapons you can hit them from there and kill them, and then move forward a step, find the next couple of opponents, kill them. Whereas if you are playing a melee character, you have to then charge into that, and suddenly you uncover the entire group of opponents, and it becomes much harder. It's actually this system that then, forced a lot of the follow-on games to change the way that they did that, so that once one opponent was seen by your characters, the entire party would appear, the entire group of opponents would appear. And you see that in later games like Pillars of Eternity and Pathfinder Kingmaker. So that's very interesting. So I'm going to play as my favorite class. This class, in my opinion, will do more damage than anybody else. This is a ranger in the archer subtype. I will do a build video on this another time, but these guys do ridiculous amounts of damage. Now, normally you'd pick a elf for this because the elves get a bonus with bows, but I decided to go with a human for this. So we are a human male archer, chaotic good, 18/90 strength. I'm not going to explain that right now. If you're familiar with Advanced D&D 2 rules, that sort of makes sense. Dexterity of 18 and Constitution of 18 and Wisdom of 14, and everything else is 10. So that gives me maximum hit points per level. That gives me maximum to hit with my bow per level. And the strength is really just so I can carry enough. And also I need strength, I think it's 17 or 18 you need to be able to use the composite longbow. Unlike in later games, version 3 of D&D, so Neverwinter Nights 1 and 2, Pathfinder Kingmaker, those types of things, the composite longbow just has a +2 to damage. That's all it gets. And it doesn't matter what your strength bonus is, you get a +2. Weapon proficiencies, I've got one pip, 1 level in axe, 2 in longbow, and 3 in 2-weapon style. Now, why is it that way? 2-weapon style, as a ranger, you start off with 2 in that. And then I have to allocate 4 points, but I can only put a maximum of 2 points into anything. So 2 points definitely goes into longbow, because that's going to be my primary weapon. So I then put 1 more point into 2-weapon style and put 1 point into axe. So I'm going to dual wield axes as my backup weapon. I'm going to almost never use it, but the AI of the game will switch to your melee weapons sometimes when someone is right up at melee range with you and you start getting hit. That it will automatically switch you to axes. So I'm going to be giving all of my characters melee weapons as well as ranged weapons, but that's really only for that situation, and it shouldn't happen a lot, at least not initially. So I'm not going to do anything with my... Actually, I'm just going to leave that voice. Normally I don't like that one too much, but I'm going to go with that, and I'm just putting Tony as my name for this playthrough. So, my other characters. I found if you want another good ranged character to play, any fighter that you put a bow on will be good, because the fighter can go up to 5 levels of skill, so what they call Grandmaster, in the longbow, and that gives you a lot of bonuses to hit and to damage and the number of attacks per round that you can get. So that class fighters are good for that, but if you then look at the subclasses of fighter, the Wizard Slayer is an interesting one. So this is a female half-orc Wizard Slayer. She has a strength of 19, a dex of 19, and dex of 18 and a constitution of 19. So those are very, very good figures, of course. I've given her 2-handed sword, one pip in that, 2-handed weapon style, 1 pip in that, just so that those two go together very well. And then I've given her 2 levels of longbow. So she's on par with the archer, although the archer will hit more and do more damage than she will, despite the fact that, the other stats are comparable, just because he gets bonuses as an archer above and beyond all of that. But the Wizard Slayer has the ability to... First of all, they have resistance to magic, which goes up per level. Like, it's only 1% at first level, but it goes up per level. And then they also have the ability to put a debuff on any wizard that they hit to make them to increase their chance of spell failure. So I feel that's a really good character to have, because the one advantage you have as a ranged group is you can take down wizards very quickly. And that's what you want to do, because, anyone with arcane spells is going to be problematic. Now, that hair is the wrong colour. So let's pick... Actually, let's go to really dark brown, I think. Okay, apart from that, I don't have a problem with that.
To battle!
Yeah, I'll accept that. The name, if anybody, Pursuivant, if anyone knows where that comes from, you'll get bonus points. And I'll confirm it in the next episode. But yeah, I've pulled a few names from different places. My next character that I think works well as a ranged character, it doesn't have to be ranged, this one, but it works well, is the Paladin subclass Undead Hunter. So they get a bonus against undead, and they're immune to level drain, and I think paralysis, but they're immune to some of the common stuff that undead do. So this character, I've also given her Flail, Morningstar, and Sword and Shield style, and I've given her crossbow. Now, why did I give her crossbow? Partly to sort of match up with her name a little bit, which you'll see in a sec. But also there is a good... It's expensive, but there is a good... there's a crossbow of speed. It's not called that. I think it's called the army crossbow or something. There's a good magical crossbow in the game. Crossbows do have the disadvantage that they are slower than normal bows, and we'll see that in a minute when I look at the stats. But yeah, that's why I picked crossbow for her. But the flail and the shield, or Morningstar and shield, are going to be her normal weapon. And if she needs to, she'll just charge into combat with those against undead. And the appearance we're all good with.
All will die.
Yep, that's a good name. And her name is Helsing. I almost went Van Helsing, but Helsing will do. So that's why she's got the crossbow, because Van Helsing, even though that was... yeah. Okay, so that's my front line. The disadvantage, by the way, I didn't mention, of the archer is he can only wear light armor. So studded leather is the best you can do. These guys can wear whatever armor they want. So they're both going to be in full plate eventually, or better. My next party member, this one's going to be a little bit weird, or seem a little bit weird, because, where are we? Here we go, Imogen. Now, you're going to look at this and go, that's Imogen. No, it's not. It's Imogen. Slightly different name, almost the same. What this is a respec of the Imogen character with better strength in particular. She has very poor strength in the game. I find that to be a real problem. And when I'm building thieves in Baldur's Gate, I start their open locks much higher than what Imogen has. What's the advantage of this? There's a couple of really good chests early on that you might want to open up. In particular, we'll see one here in the first episode. So all I've basically done is bumped all 40 points that you get at the start straight into open locks. And as soon as she levels up, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to bump all the points into that until I think we end up at like 90%. And then I'll start raising up fine traps and maybe some of the others later. We are going to... So she is spec'd correctly so that we can dual class her later as a wizard, and we will do that at the same point that we would normally do Imogen. And she has the same weapon proficiencies and all that sort of stuff. So it's basically Imogen respect with higher stats so that she's got better strength and better open locks to begin with. Colouring is slightly different that I went for.
Your life shall be mine.
But that's fine. And of course, Imogen rather than Imogen. Then we have a sorceress. So this is an elven dragon disciple. Nothing majorly, exciting here. Charisma of 18. Interesting fact. Well, if you play a stock standard sorcerer in the game, you actually don't need high charisma at all. You can actually have 10 charisma and the game will still let you work. But for some reason, the Dragon Disciple has to have at least 17 in charisma. In other, like version 3 of D&D and things like that, charisma was the primary stat, and it affected what levels of spells you could get and things like that. In this, it doesn't. Your spell progression is just automatic. You can have negative charisma and it would still work. You can't have negative, but you know what I mean. You could have really low charisma and you'd still be able to cast all spells. So, but as a Dragon Disciple, it forced me to have a minimum of 17. I went for a high dex and a high constitution as well. I've given everyone basically high constitution to make sure that they're going to be able to survive. And the spells Identify and Magic Missile, so and a Sling as weapon proficiency. Now, you could go with Dart or Throwing Dagger as other weapon proficiencies there. However, I find Sling works best. Darts, their range is shorter than everything else, so this character will move into the front line and end up becoming the target of everybody. And daggers and darts, basically you have to equip in your weapon slot, not in your quiver slot, and so it becomes a lot harder to manage. So yeah, that's that character. We won't use this voice.
Death will come swiftly for you.
Because that sounds like an 80-year-old crone.
Go, go, go!
That one doesn't sound right for us.
You're going to be sorry.
That one sounds right for a sorceress. And I just called her Invoker. Don't know why I did. And then finally, now, unlike if you've seen my playthroughs of Baldur's Gate, for example, and even when I play Neverwinter Nights 1 and 2 and things like that, in a lot of games I don't go with divine spellcasters very often, so clerics or druids or things like that, purely because I'm just not into them. I don't like them as characters. But in Baldur's Gate you need them because there's not much in the way of healing apart from having a cleric on your team. So this is another half-orc, only because that gives the extra constitution. The reason I'm doing this is that with the inclusion of some items, any character that starts with a constitution of 19, and you can only really do it with dwarves or half-orcs, there are a couple of items in the game that will buff that up to 20. And when you get to 20, you regenerate automatically in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, and Icewind Dale 1 and 2. So that's the reason why I go to 19 for these guys for their constitution. She has a wisdom of 18, which is required. Dex 18, so she's a decent slinger, because she's going to be using slings as well. And a strength of 16, only because I had the points to spare, and that gives us a little extra carrying capacity. She's going to have Flail or Morningstar as her primary weapon. She's going to be using a shield as well. Later on, when I get another point I can put into things, I'll put it into sword and shield style so that she's got a bit of a bonus to using a shield. And Sling is going to be her primary weapon. Those are the spells that she knows, but we're basically only going to...
Who's in for it now?
No.
Go, go!
Yes. We're basically going to use just Cure Light Wounds as far as spells go initially. And, and Annoyer. I don't know why I called her Annoyer, but I did. So let's get on into it. I don't know how far I'm going to get through this. I might speed through quite a bit of this early play. I'm not going to do a lot of the talky segments and stuff like that, the video things. I'm going to skip over a lot of them, and I'm going to skip over a lot of the moving around between areas in the game. For the rest of this episode, I think I'm just we'll go into the inn here, the Candlekeep Inn, and we will just equip our party and get them ready, and then we'll finish. So the first thing you want to do, though, is you want to talk to Firebeard Elvenhair. And if you don't know, if you talk to him 30 times...
Decent folk nowadays.
If you talk to him 30 times, he gives you 300 gold. And you can do this again later when you meet him in Beregost. So let's just quickly do that. There we go. Party gained 300 gold. So the other thing I'm going to do is, let's just all of us reform over here. We are all going to give our quarterstaves that we are given as our starting weapons over to Imogen. She's going to tuck them away for us because we don't want them and you can't sell them. So let's get Imogen. Now we're going to do a quick run through here and just grab all the good loot that we can before we talk to Winthrop. And because Imogen has really good lockpicking skills, she's going to be able to get into some of the chests that might normally be a little bit of a problem. And that's the advantage to rebuilding her early in the game. There's a number of places that you just can't get into, and she should be able to get into them, into those chests. You just have to be careful in these ones because there are people asleep in these rooms. It's pretty rare that they wake up, and you just don't want to open chests up in a room where there's anyone who's awake. So that's why we're not going to do these other couple of rooms. This chest here is the one that you can never get into unless you've got really good lockpicking skills. And considering that this Star Sapphire, you can sell it for 1,000 gold, it is worth it. So we're not going to go into any of these 3 rooms. This one has nothing in it, and these 2, because there's someone already in them, we're not going to try and open that chest or talk to that guy. We could try picking pockets, but we didn't give her any ability in picking pockets, and I just don't like picking pockets in general. Oh, I forgot to put the quarterstaves away. I always forget to do that. Just finding anywhere, really. It doesn't matter where I put them, just somewhere to get rid of them. Oh. What do I then do? I click the wrong button. There we go. Okay, all done. So, let's buy up all of our equipment now.
My hotel's as clean as an elven arse.
Yeah, you're a kidder. Clean as an elven arse. That's so funny. Right, so, as I was saying earlier, my archer cannot wear heavy armor, and you can see that here. If we select him, you can see all the equipment that he can and cannot use. So he can't use chain or splint mail. There's also only 1 suit of splint and 2 suits of chain. So I'm going to give the splint to our cleric, and the 2 suits of chain are going to go to our frontline fighters. We'll be able to replace those later on. Studded leather for Imogen and myself. We need a shield for the cleric and a shield for the Undead Hunter. And we need helmets for everybody who can use them, which just our thief and our sorceress cannot. Okay, primary weapons for everybody. There's only 1 composite longbow, despite the fact that Pursuivant and I can both use them. So, composite longbow for me, longbow for Pursuivant, light crossbow for... Well, I could even go heavy crossbow, actually, for... I think I will, because it does 2 points extra damage. It's very slow, though. No, actually, I don't want it to be that slow. Speed factor 5. I much prefer the light crossbow, even though it does a little bit less damage. Well, it does comparable damage to the bow, the composite longbow. Anyway, we'll be fine. Short bow for Imogen, and slings for our casters. And then backup weapons, we took axe as our backup there. So let's buy a couple of axes for me. The only 2-handed sword here for Pursuivant. Our Undead Hunter, we're going to give a Morning Star. Imogen is going to have a short sword. No backup weapon for Invoker, our sorceress. And a flail for Annoya. And then we need ammunition. So, each of these is 20 arrows. You can fit 8 arrows per quiver. So to get a full 3 quivers full is 12 bundles. So we'll do that. And we're also going to buy a bundle of bolts. We'll see this in a little minute. This is going to be, well, in the next episode probably. We need that for a quest here in the keep. So 12 arrows there. 12 arrows. What am I doing? Cancel that. You get bolts. 12 of those. 12 of these for Imogen. And then bullets, 12. And 12. Right, let's just equip everybody. So the helmets are useful for those who can take them because they stop you from getting critical hits. Interesting mechanic there, but that's the way that works. If you're wearing a helmet, you're immune to critical hits. Okay. Let's give that to... Oh, I forgot to sell this stuff. We had enough money without even having to sell anything. We better do that. We better sell these other things because that extra money is going to come in handy. Oh, what am I doing? Wrong spot. Oops, didn't want that there. Let's just do that. Okay. Yeah, so... there we go. I didn't realise how close we were to running out of money there. Very good. Okay. What we'll just really quickly, we'll have a look at the stats. Now, what you can see here is, ignoring the to hit armor class 0 stuff, which might not make a lot of sense to most people, at the moment, with our bow equipped, we are able to make 5 attacks every 2 rounds, which basically means we'll do 3 attacks in the first round and 2 in the second. If I switch this character to use melee weapons, and we have a look again, we only get 2 attacks per round because he's dual wielding. If we have a look at Pursuivant, she also has 5 attacks every 2 rounds at the moment with her bow, but if I switch her to using her sword and we switch back, she only gets a single attack per round. So the other big advantage, just by having a couple of points in your missile weapons. Now, if we have a look at Anoya here, because she's only got 1 point in sling, she only gets 1 attack per round. And she probably can never go any higher than that. But for our fighters, they start off with multiple attacks per round. And that is just really good. And in fact, the archer, I think, will increase the number of attacks per round much quicker than the standard fighters because of his archer abilities. So yeah, we're doing very well. We have 5 attacks per round. And then the other thing that we're going to really quickly do is we're going to customize these guys and set the AI. So you can use these standard scripts, and the range script is quite good, or there's, particular range scripts for each of the character types. The clerical ranged one will do missile weapons and blah, blah, blah. But by using the advanced AI, we can be a little bit more selective. So this is my one. We're going to attack enemies. We're going to prefer ranged weapons so that we don't use melee. We're going to use items, and we're going to use special abilities. This includes our called shot ability, which we'll get later, but we're going to turn off spell use. And we don't have any of these other abilities here, so that's fine. Let's go to Pursuivant. Her script, we're going to set to attack enemies, prefer ranged, use items, which hopefully means she'll use potions. Special abilities, she doesn't have any. So we'll turn that off, and we'll turn the spells off because she doesn't have any either. We just don't want to clutter things up, make it confusing. With Helsing, she does have spells eventually, and we want to turn undead. Yes, we want to turn undead because she will have that ability eventually. And then for our rogue, our thief, we don't want to use special abilities because her special abilities are actually listed here. We do want find traps, but we don't want hide in shadows turned on because it just slows her down too much. to having to hide all the time. You could do it, but I prefer not to. This is basically the same as the thief ranged attack. When not in combat, the thief will attempt to find traps. So it doesn't attempt to use any stealth. The defensive one, I think, will... so like some of this stuff is quite good. The thief will attack any enemies he notices who are attacking party members. He will not move far away from the party leader. So if he's pursuing an enemy, he'll turn back. If he's reduced to 50% or fewer hit points, he'll run away and then attempt to hide in shadows and avoid combat. So there are some very interesting options you've got there. Even the cautious one. So some of those ones are really quite good, but I like the ability to be able to completely customize it. So let's just quickly do this. Our wizard one is going to be interesting, though. We're going to prefer range. We're going to use items. We're going to turn off use special abilities, because I think that will include things like her breath weapon once she gets higher levels, because she is a dragon disciple. And we're going to turn off offensive and defensive spells, and we'll control those manually. And this is going to be very similar, or basically the same as our paladin. Turn off offensive spells, turn off defensive spells, turn undead, and we're done. Okay, so I think that'll do for this episode. Thank you very much for joining me for this episode of Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition. If you enjoyed this episode, please give me a like and share it with your friends. Be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest episodes, and I will see you for the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.